happy Memorial Day weekend for those of you here in the United States. And as we celebrate we celebrate the beginning of summer here in the Northern Hemisphere, here in the United States on this day, that I want to also remind us that what Memorial Day, the purpose of Memorial Day was also to honor and keep in mind those people who have given their lives for our freedom. So keep that in mind today while you're celebrating, and celebrate those people, and everyone who has laid their life on the line for our freedom. So I'm going to start off today with a quote. And thank you, Josh, for those quotes, because they are the essence of this talk about our voice and how important our voice is, both for ourselves and for the greater community. James O'Day, who wrote the book The Conscious Activists, where activism meets mysticism, he said, spirituality cannot exist in a vacuum. Ignoring social conditions or the plight of humanity, and activism cannot hope to transform the social order in the absence of mature spiritual development. Both must grow beyond any form of privileged exclusivity. In fact, they each must embrace a reality that joins them in service to individual and collective liberation. So just let that sink in for a moment, that as we become more spiritually mature, we have a responsibility, because we begin to understand the concept of oneness. We begin to allow that intellectual knowledge be the rote of what we have memorized, what we have learned about oneness. And it starts to come down into our heart chakra. It starts to become down into that embodiment of what oneness means. And so we being Centers for Spiritual Living and CSL Metro, have a document that's called our Statement of Beliefs. And one of those statements is that we believe the ultimate goal of life to be a complete freedom from all discord of every nature, and that this goal is sure to be attained by all. And when we align with this vision, if that's our desire, to align with this vision of freedom from all discord of every nature, and that all are to achieve this goal, wow, that type of liberation demands that we move from a passive belief, that we move from ideas and ideals that are in our intellect, to embracing and embodying those ideals, those concepts. And it demands from us a proactive engagement and a transformation, and to actively participate in creating this world of where there is freedom from all discord of every nature. Wow, that is a lot to ask of any one of us. So I want to look at that today, and look at what is the power of our voice, and how, as we open that power up for advocating for ourselves, we have a ripple effect across all of humanity. So speaking up and taking action, transcending the silence, embracing our voice in addressing and resolving conflicts, that all of that moves us towards harmony and equity. And our individual effort is not isolated from anyone else, because, like I said, it's a ripple effect. As I stand up for myself, as I take action for myself, as I speak up, speak my truth and speak it from a place of love and not of fear. And so as I go through this today, that's where I'm talking about is taking that voice from love of self, from love of all around me, for that highest and best that is not only mine, but is for all around me. That this individual effort is a step towards the collective liberation, the liberation of all of humanity. It starts to dismantle barriers. It starts to create this environment of freedom and justice that is acceptable to all. And one of the the ripple effect that happens is it gives others permission to do the same when they see us do it. So I wanted you to take a moment right now and listen to some questions that Ernest Holmes asked. I'm paraphrasing. I'm not going to do a direct quote, but this is in Living the Science of Mind. Ernest Holmes asks these questions, and I'd like you, if you want to, just close your eyes or cast your gaze down so you're not distracted by what's on your computer screen, and just think about these questions for a second. What would happen if we could convert the energy of fear to faith? Convert the energy of fear to faith. And what would happen if we were to convert the energy of doubt and uncertainty into a feeling of belonging to the universe and being safe in it? Just think of that for a moment. So when a fear comes up, for us to be able to convert that energy that we can put into that fear into the faith, as I like to think of it, that God's got my back, that the universe is out there to support me. And if I take that energy of doubt and uncertainty, of what do I do? Can I do this? Am I good enough? Am I worthy? Whatever it may be, and take that feeling and convert it into knowing that I belong, knowing that I am safe, knowing that the step that I take is supported. What would life be like? And when we are silent, when we see something going on in our own life or around us that is out of integrity, that is not in alignment, that is incongruent with this vision we have of a world that works for all. And one of the aspects of that is to be free from all discord of every nature. And we remain silent. There are consequences to that. And some of these consequences, let me go back for a second. When we default into this silence, when there's a conflict that arises, an incongruency to our vision, an incongruency to how we feel about our own selves, then what happens is a consequence of that is we support systemic issues. We inhibit personal growth, and therefore we inhibit collective growth also. We contribute, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, to harmful patterns and inequalities that exist. And it allows these issues to fester unaddressed and contribute to that cycle of unresolved grievances and suppressed voices that leads to an environment of tension and misunderstanding. And I had no intention of bringing this up until I went through all of this last night and actually recorded it. And it's like, why would I want to even talk about this? But I'm going to. It's very personal to me. It's while I was still spiritually asleep, somehow I found that power of my voice to come from a place of love and not of fear or anger or hate. And I changed my life. And in doing that, changed a collective. also. And here's some of you know that in another part of my life, I was an engineer. And when I was first coming out of school, it was unusual to have women engineers. And I worked for a company that my first job in that company was to work in a manufacturing facility I was the second woman engineer, and the first one had been pretty much, she gave up. She couldn't take it anymore, and she left. Because of all of the things that happened. I am not going to go through any of those stories because they're not pertinent other than they were there. It was a difficult situation. And she and I became very good friends, and she supported me through all of this. And what happened was I she had been resistant. She had been coming from anger and fear. And again, at the time, I didn't have any of this vocabulary. I didn't have any of this awareness. It's all in going back and looking at it on my journey. And what I chose to do instead was to come out, to overcome the silence. I put up with it for a while. And again, I won't tell you any of the stories. If you're interested, we can talk about it later. But that's not important. It was the ridicule, it was the degrading, it was making sure I understood that I wasn't good enough. Things that happened that I decided to stay silent for a while. And then it was, I can't do this anymore. And I was determined to be the best damn engineer I could be, no matter what was going on. And so I overcame that silence. And I came from a place of, and I'm not sure how I found it at the time, but man, I found I am good enough. I am better than good enough. And and I was able to let go of that internal conflict that I was feeling and the emotional strain that it was putting on me. And at that point in time, I still had a pretty hot temper. And it was everything I could do to not just come out and slash people verbally at the knees, and if they're lucky, at the knee, not the throat. And there was this frustration and resentment and fear, and I could feel the isolation that my friend had felt, that she put herself in, which we've talked about it since. And she put herself in that isolation to stay away from it. And it started to undermine my own self-worth and my connection with others and was inhibiting me doing my job. And I found that voice. And what I did is I went and I talked to people. I talked to the people who were being like that to me to try to understand why. And what I can tell you is at the end of my time in that particular job, I was working we were melting glass for Corel dinnerware. And the guys who were running these huge melting units were like my dad's age. And when I left that plant to go to another job within that same company, two of the most ornery, um, I want to use stereotypes so you would understand, and so forgive me if I insult anyone. They were, Harley Davidson, motorcycle gang kind of people, nice guys in general, but they were the hardest nuts for me to crack, if you will, to let me in. And when I left that manufacturing plant, I was walking across the floor, and both of them came to me together with tears in their eyes, telling me how much they would miss me. That's what coming out of the silence can do. That's what coming out of that silence through love can do. And so there was this ripple effect. Well, for a number of years after that, every woman engineer that went to that plant contacted me one way or another, either sent me a thank you card, asked me to come for lunch or something to thank me for paving this path of acceptance for them. And I can tell you the company I worked for, it's a Fortune 100 company, or was. I assume they still are. I haven't checked lately. I know they still are. This company was one of the worst places out in the world of professional women. It was like avoid this company at all costs. When I first started there, I found that out after I'd taken the job. And within 10 years, they became on the list in the top 100 companies for professional women to work for. That's the kind of effect, us coming out of our silence from a place of love and wanting to understand, of not just of not of hate or anger, then you can affect the world and not even know you're doing that. It's that ripple effect. It's the ripple effect. And the global theme for this month was put together by two women, Sonia Hart and Reverend Christine Alexander. And Sonia Hart she's a practitioner at CSL Barbados. So if you're ever in Barbados, know that there's a CSL there. And one of the things that she says is that embracing this active role in our personal and communal lives is essential for manifesting the ultimate goal of complete freedom and a harmonious existence for everyone. And that's what we're talking about today. Because what happens is when we stay silent, when we allow those frustrations, when we it just starts creating this environment of eroding whatever trust may happen, whether it's within a direct relationship or with the community in general, and it actually limits opportunities for positive change, because we become like we can see on the grander scale in our country where we don't want to listen to the other side. The other side is just bad. There's sides. First of all, there's sides. And it's them and us, or it's me and them, or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. As long if we are in that, keeping ourselves silent, being out of integrity with what we know as our truth, we just start to dissolve inside. And there's a let's see, I'm trying to find that. I think Josh, you read it. I'm sorry. Excuse me, I need a drink of water. There's a quote about that's attributed to Martin Luther King. That's what I want. It's attributed to Martin Luther King, and actually is a paraphrase of his sermon that he gave the day after Bloody Sunday in 1965. And it is, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. And if you go and you read his whole talk, that is the essence of what he's talking about. And as we become spiritually more mature, and we really understand and start to really understand here in our heart oneness and what it means, and that what can happen if we stay silent, then we come to a point where, as Carolyn Myss says in Sacred Contracts, once we are awakened to something, a truth or an injustice, we are held accountable within ourselves and must take action according to that truth. And it starts with us. It starts with us. Because when we start to voice our perspective, our own perspective on what's going on even in our own lives, it opens the door to change, to dialogue, to innovation and transformation. And it just fosters a more inclusive and just society. By my taking the time to talk to these two I won't even say what we finally got to a joking point where I would just call them the old farts. Sorry. That's what we would call them. And they would call me a foreman rather than a supervisor, because to them a foreman was the person they wanted leading them in the day-to-day activities. So anyway, my taking that step of talking to them, listening to them for understanding, acknowledging them, letting them know that they were melting glass. And this was another thing that we would used to joke about. They were melting glass when I was not even a twinkle in my daddy's eye. You know? And it was taking that step opened them up to accepting. They even talked to me about they were sorry for how they treated the first woman engineer. And when I invited her to come back, they were actually able to have a conversation with her. And the three of them became very good friends. It's so beautiful. And when we do this, it just opens everything up. Sandy led a beautiful meditation today. And she started it with a part of a quote from Dale Carnegie, where he said, "Inaction breeds doubt and fear." And it was an incredible meditation. And what he goes on to say is, action breeds confidence and courage. If you want to conquer fear, do not sit home and think about it. Go out and get busy. Take those steps. There's Walter Brueggemann, who is I think he's a Protestant minister. One of the things he said that really struck me when I read this was, faith is both the conviction that justice can be accomplished and the refusal to accept injustice. That's faith. So let's, take those fears and turn them into faith. Repurpose that energy of fear. Because what happens is when we speak out, we start to remove barriers. And some of the things that can keep us from speaking out, that kept me from speaking out, was fear of rejection, fear of the perceived power imbalance that there is. I was not sure what my management was going to do if I became able to talk to these two guys. And I would even go to management people, because it wasn't just the people on the manufacturing floor, it was management also. And I went to them and talked to them too. And it also, any concerns that we have about what the fallout might be, I had no idea. Was my life going to get worse? Was it going to get better? Was I going to be drummed out like the first woman had been drummed out? But when you overcome this need to stay silent, and you take a proactive approach, when you come from that place of love in our hearts, you start to build confidence and build resilience. And when we start with that self-awareness, we can recognize what the root of our fear is, and we can work with it. And this is where I'll put in a plug for practitioners, because working with a practitioner on this would really, really help. I wish at the time that I was going through this, was in this teaching and had the ability to work with a practitioner. It would have, I can't even imagine how much more significant it would have been. And we start to develop a network of allies and mentors, and there's your practitioner, the practitioners that you can go to and get support in this to help. They will always hold that knowing your divinity, no matter what's going on. And when I take it in small steps, and I took it in small steps, and we can manage our acts of communication. We can make some choices, take the little steps start to add to building up our courage. And the more we take those little steps, the bigger those steps can get. And it empowers us to confront any barriers that come. in front of us. And that will also allow us to not only advocate for ourselves, but also advocate for others who who are also in the same situation or a different one, but it'll allow us to advocate more effectively when we take those little steps. And all of this contributes again to an open, transformative dialogue. There was a Ram Dass quote that came from his book, Being Ram Dass, where he says, social action can be done with love. The spiritual work has to come first. And so I see it as this spiral. As I do the spiritual work, I can then come from love and I can take social action from that space, from that knowing the divinity of the other, whoever the other is. And I will tell you right now, as I looked back on that last night, I mean, it was like 3 or 4 years of my life that I'm talking about. As I, first take my steps out as an adult in the world, in my profession of choice, I am so amazed at through how deeply asleep I was at the time about my own divinity, that I know now in hindsight that I was connecting with the divinity of every other person who was harassing me, who was saying these things, who was setting me up for failure over and over again. And there was a part of me, that human part of me, that wanted to be angry and hate and everything, but somehow that light came through and it changed the whole company and the way that they treated professional women. And then women in general, and then all of their employees. They made a complete shift in their whole management style, which I got to be part of too. So in conclusion, remember this silence is not spiritual neutrality. What we do is we surrender our moral responsibility. We surrender our integrity. We surrender our own, I want to say comfort, but it's not comfort. We surrender our own authentic self. When we are out of alignment when we let things go that are out of alignment, when we don't take some action. And I found a poem that I think will address this. If you're going, yeah, but I'm not one to go out and, march with a sign. That's okay. We've got a lot of tools. We've got prayer, we've got affirmations, we have visualizations, we have meditation, we have a lot of tools in our spiritual toolbox that are available to us that allow us to take this step and take it in baby steps and take it so that we are just pushing that comfort zone. We don't have to go from comfort zone here to way over here. We can do it in increments. And so there are some steps to overcoming this silence. And the first one is to embrace our voice, to recognize the power, the divine power of our thoughts and our voice, of what we say. Every word we say is a prayer. Everything we say is a prayer. We can engage in these spiritual practices that I've talked about, the affirmations, and build our confidence with affirmative prayer and meditation and visualization. We can align ourselves with the universal mind. We can go to our statements of what we believe and what we envision as both as CSL and as CSL Metro. They're all out there. Read it and align yourself with that. We can also create a safe space. When we take this step ourselves, we give permission to others. We open up dialogue. We support other people who are standing up for themselves. And we can advocate for change using our voice, both for personal and social. And just remember, when we advocate for ourselves, we are advocating for all around us. There is only one life. Think of it as the web. What I do over here is felt way over somewhere else. And that we can be persistent in this journey and align ourselves with unity and love and justice. And just remember that each step we take is a step towards greater liberation and enlightenment for ourselves and for all of humanity. And so I leave you with this poem by Lauren Brantz. And if you're not familiar with her work, I invite you to check her out. And I'll put it in the chat after we finish. In a time of hate, love is an act of resistance. In a time of fear, faith is an act of resistance. In a time of misinformation, education is an act of resistance. In a time of poor leadership, community is an act of resistance. In a time like this, joy is an act of resistance. Resist, resist, resist. I love you, each and every one of you. Namaste.